All right then. Welcome. This is another practice. This is Wednesday, the 18th of November. You're listening to RWB Beanster, and we're continuing to practice the commentary, the session, the technical side of things. All of the guys racing as well, and I'm very pleased to say that I'm also joined by Theo again, my buddy, who will stand in for me and help me with commentating duties. Hi, Dan.
Good evening, Si. A pleasure to join you again. And as you said, another chance for us to iron out all our little technical glitches. And I realised tonight that actually what I really want is 3 screens. You know, I've got 2 huge screens is not enough, and now I've got to switch tabs on a browser. So, I need to throw another screen up before Saturday.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way then. So, ultra-wide definitely not good enough. 3 screens possible, but they'd have to be at least 32 inches each in order to do all of the coverage of the data. It feels like we're in, like you said, command center. I really love it, but it is going to cost me a few quid, I think.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's fun, actually, isn't it? We're both quite techie, surrounded by screens, and I will share a picture in the Discord once I've actually got my Saturday setup in place. Because what we've got here, and I'm going off piste here because this is now practice. This is really, in my mind, everybody's just prepping for Saturday now. Everybody's got Saturday in the mind. So we've got Discord, so that I can look at live incident verdicts. I can look at waiting for comms to see if we've got anyone who wants to drop in, commentators. Yeah. So I've got that. I've got the live Discord stream so that I can see what camera size looking at. So, when he's talking about a certain car or a certain angle, I've got that view open. I've got ACC running in spectator mode so that I can take my own angles and go off and look at my own bits and pieces while Si's talking. I've got Pitwall Live open on its own dedicated monitor. I've got a spreadsheet that me and Si have been working on with team information and driver information, other bits and pieces. I've got the YouTube chat open, and now you can see where I've run out of screens.
Good shout.
You want 4 monitors now. I've just thrown another one into the mix.
Yeah, I missed that one. So, yeah, that's another monitor. What was your first reaction when you dumped yourself into it and saw the weather here? I'm loving this. I wonder if this is going to be for the race as well.
Fantastic! Doesn't it look glorious to start with? And actually, as we speak, I see someone scaling off, and oh dear,
getting collected.
Turned into a moment.
Okay, we'll move on.
Well, this is good, right? Because this is a practice race, and it's a chance for people to get to grips with it in the wet. Realise that their braking distances are going to be different. That on the gas, they're going to need more traction control. They're going to be a little bit more cautious. And I think that's gonna bode us well for the 12 hours, which is variable weather. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's true. It's 12 hours, of course, which is real time, but 24 hours sim time. So this is going to be on Saturday, day and night, which is great because, of course, that creates so many different dynamics in the racing. Temperatures will change, pressures will change. We may get some rain. That's one of the parts of the simulation. It could run rain at any point in that day or night sequence. We'll get dawn, we'll get dusk, we'll get everything that you possibly could want from racing. There'll be some fabulous screen grabs to get as we go around here for 12 hours. Just a couple of points of reference then to kick us off. Obviously, we're just in a free practice session right now. Tonight's practice session, we're trying to encourage as many drivers to jump onto the server and practice the driver swapping, because for those that are relatively new to ACC, and that's not many, I grant you, but there will be some that have probably been racing on ACC for a while and not actually done any driver swaps. So driver swapping is a thing. Right, so you have to learn it. You have to have spent a little time working out what it means, how you instigate it, who instigates it, when does it actually occur, and how you then have separate comms with your team rather than just direct comms in the actual driver channel, and that all needs a bit of practice. So that's what tonight's about. So what we're going to be watching is a 1-hour race in about 6 minutes time, and in that 1-hour race, I think it was set at 17 minutes stint time. Or something fairly short like that, in order for us to force driver swap overs as much as possible. So just checking that I got my facts right there. I think that is correct. Yeah, 19 minutes stint time, which does force people to have to jump in and out of the car. Now, obviously, if a team has only brought one driver, they can double, treble stint. That doesn't matter. But it's a way of forcing people to jump in and out of the car. The other thing that's a bit of an invisible test that always happens in these pre-build-ups to big events is we're really checking to make sure that everyone is getting a good network experience. Drivers from all over the world are going to be joining us on Saturday, and the implication of lag or low quality networks can be quite significant. Drivers can get lag spots. Obviously, they can have complete disconnects. But the way the game handles it in its netcodes is you often see a car that appears to kind of elastic band around a bit. So even down a straight, both cars flat out, one can appear to be accelerating and braking when they're definitely not. It's just the way that the game manifests it. But that's one of those checks. But we'll be keeping an eye on that as we go through the racing.
Yeah, I think anybody that does any sim racing events, they've all experienced it in one shape or another. You just have to deal with it. That's the reality of joining an international club, open to everybody from around the world. Obviously within the limits, as you said, of having a half-decent internet connection that can actually make it a cool event. And we've seen that by looking through the teams and all the flags from all the drivers around the world, and so much so that we've actually got a little cheat sheet, flags of the world, in our spreadsheet. Because obviously I slacked off at geography in school, and I was looking at some of the flags and just couldn't work out which countries they were.
Yeah, that's no disrespect to any countries, because we weren't that smart at school. But you go through the flags and you go, oh, that's what that is. So yeah, we're on top of everything in this comms booth. Just to recap as well, and we'll go through this as part of the whole of the day on Saturday. We're raising money for charity, so obviously everybody's going to enjoy themselves doing sim racing, and I can tell there's a real buzz building up around the event. There's 179 drivers, I think, that are registered here for this event. It really is going to be, spectacular. It's the culmination of a year-long series of endurance races at RWB. But it's actually even more special because we're doing it for charity. So we're raising money for the Charity Mind, which is a charity that provides support services, helplines, people to help anybody who's struggling with any mental health issues. And at this point in time, where some of us may have spent many, many months away from our loved ones or friends and had no close contact, it's difficult. It's just a little bit more of a difficult time for people. Sim racing is a great way to have a focus on something, to really pour yourself into something. And RWB and everybody is really proud to be raising money for Mind, and we'll keep reflecting on that as we go through the 12-hour session on Saturday. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we get on with the targets, and you'll see on the bottom of the screen there the admin team, who are, I would say, probably the geekiest team I've ever met. Nobody should take that as a disrespectful comment. I'm probably head geek, but they've actually created a little ticker tape on the bottom there, so you can see the donations that will be going through on Saturday. We've been testing that. Our route to the grand total of 1,000. I desperately hope we smash that. We'll be doing as much as we can to raise awareness and to raise as much money as we can, really.
Yeah, and what an amazing charity that have got tentacles reaching out into so many different avenues around mental health, helping out around the latest government legislation, lockdowns, how that affects you at work with statutory sick pay and your benefits, how you engage with your GP, what happens if you have to go into hospital, what's the impact on housing. And these are all things that people are facing right now. There's people on furlough, there's people that have lost their jobs, and they're really up against it. Mind has got people out there, campaigners, support workers, and it's just amazing. I think the things they do just blow my mind.
Yeah, and just to make sure that everybody's aware, we're very heavily sponsored. We've got teams who are helping us along the way here. We obviously are sponsored by Racing Sim Tools and SimSoc, who are very loyal supporters and sponsors of our WB Racing Club. But we have a special surprise for Saturday, which is we've actually got a prize to give for the winning team. Which is a next level racing rig. So a light version. We'll go into more details on the Saturday of it, but we're actually bringing a winning prize to the team that actually takes the first place on the podium, and we'll be sharing more details of that on the Saturday. But that's just all thrown into it. Obviously, some of you will be aware, we also have some great content creators and streamers who are joining us for the racing. They'll be tough to beat, you can all be sure of that. And really looking forward to seeing how they perform. And as always, we welcome people to jump into the commentary box with us. It's going to be extremely difficult for us to fill as much of the time as possible. And we'll need to get your version of the story, or your perspective on the racing, or how many sleepless nights you've had trying to work out how to shave off a quarter of a second in Eau Rouge. And that's the kind of stuff that we'll be doing throughout the day. And I think it'll be busy, but fun, as long as Dan and I don't fry our brains.
Yeah, so we're in it for a reasonable haul. I think we'll just see how it goes on the Saturday. We're certainly prepping ourselves for a big chunky stint at the start, but let's see how we go. You know, this for me, this is an endurance for us as much as it is for all the participants.
Yeah, so let's just go through a little bit of the format. We've got a few seconds. I think there'll probably be a little break before the grid up for the actual hour race. So we've been running quali. It's still open at the moment. There's a hot stint quali program in place, which started on the 14th of November at 1 o'clock GMT and will close on the 20th of November at 1 o'clock GMT. And in that time, any driver from any team can jump on the quali server and can just blast around some laps. The laps that will be put forward for potential grid position will be the fastest 5 laps which were clean. So no offs, no off tracks, no limits extended, just clean laps, and it'll be the fastest 5 from your collection. So if you spend an hour on there, it'll take the 5 fastest consecutive. So not lap 1 and lap 58 and lap 69. It'll take the 5 consecutive fastest laps you've got, and that will, in your fastest driver in your team, that'll define where your whole team's position is. And that really creates an interesting dynamic. I mean, apart from anything, it forces each qualifier to be able to keep the car on the grey stuff, which is easier said than done, especially in this weather. But it also creates an interesting dynamic that the very fastest driver in your team, who may have put the car in 6th place, for example, might not be the guy who was driving in the first stint. So you may get some really interesting first hour stint dynamics where some of the fastest drivers, that is a strategic decision that you can make. I mean, everyone has a number 1 driver that's already been assigned. That's not changeable, but it could create quite an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way of doing qualifying. You know, rather than the traditional, you go out and you warm your tyres up for 1 or 2 laps and then you absolutely punch it out. This actually means you need consistency as well as speed, and the great thing about that is that's important for an endurance race. So you know, I think it starts to get you in the right mindset. I'm just taking a little look at the qualifying as it stands now, even though we've got a couple of days to run. So at the moment we've got Dalking from the Dalking Community Car, team number 82 in P1. We've got James Hartnell and Archie Clifford Roberts from team BD Racing in P2. We've got Ernor Cavillon and RWB Sammy C from Team 1337 Racing in P3. I'll only go down to P5. We've got Nate Newcomber and Scott Free. They're on Team SF3 Racing in P4. And then we've got Elgard, Valerie Solheim, and Ignacy Buchek on Team McLeod Racing Team in P5.
I'm going to go for McLeod for that. I'm going to go for McLeod for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, good save. You might have to do that a few times over
Well,
the
we'll
Saturday,
see,
quite honestly.
Yeah, again,
So
the disclaimer is we can't speak every language, don't know everyone's surnames. We'll do our best.
And these teams, they're all in the 217s. You know, there's some serious pace out there, but all to play for until the quali session finishes over the next couple of days. So we'll probably see some changes there.
Yeah, fabulous. It's starting to heat up in the cars. So interesting. Look at that. We're going to have an hour race in the wet. So this will probably not be representative of the start of the race itself, but that's neither here nor there because it could get to this condition at some point in the race itself. So excited about the start, and the start will be in the usual format, which is a rolling start. The team has practiced for many months good ACC starts, and the general consensus is that the much less accidents happen when you do a short start, not the full green flag lap, and that you don't have the overlay with the green box that you have to keep in, because everyone should really be concentrating on the cars in front of them anyway, like you would if it was a real race, and stop, kind of focusing on this kind of mini game of trying to keep your car in the green zone. Found that actually produces the least incidents. I know the drivers have had plenty of opportunities to discuss how they're going to manage Eau Rouge, Raidillon, and the whole of that first lap. We had a great practice session on Saturday last and proved that was very capable of keeping the cars on the track. So fingers crossed for tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes. Well, who's your money on, Dan? I put you on the spot.
Oh, come on. I'm gonna go Elgaard. We're starting in P6. We've got a random grid again, just to point out. I was reading out the quali. That's the hot stint ready for Saturday. Random grid again for the practice race of an hour long. But I just because I'm kind of loving the BMW down the straights at Spa.
Yeah.
Isn't it great? I'm looking at this list of guys. First of all, we've got a great turnout. I think I saw 28 or 29 teams in here, and they've all got to do 4 pit stops inside of an hour. It's just going to be insane.
And here we go, as we line up for the final session, going over to the line, and it's ready, steady, go! Green, we're off, and we've got a spinner already, a little way back down the track there, about 2 or 3 places back, but a comfortable start at the front of the pack. It looks like they've got away. Ian Mackey has maintained his lead ahead of Scott Free. In fact, if anything, he's pulled away a little bit, got a clean start, some slipping and sliding going on there behind, I can see, but everyone seems to be okay through Raidillon. I'll just pace us back a little bit through the track just to see we're all still making it through. It may have been an incident. We're just checking to make sure there's nothing too serious, but with these conditions, very, very difficult to get it around those. I can see a car spinning off there just onto the grass. Could be getting a little bit dicey as we go up Kemmel Straight, but actually everyone's okay. One recovering up at the front there. Just tracking back a little further just to make sure that we are safe. Coming back down the track, down to Florian. Making it through safely, so we're down into single file. We have somebody in the pit here, which is Dylan Muller. That's okay, probably just had a difficult start. And as I've spoken that, Dave Crew has slid through into first position, and Scott Free is in second, with Ruben Simonite in third and Elgaard in fourth. Archie Clifford Roberts in fifth, and Menacing Skull in sixth. Phil Valley in seventh, Wilhelm Breinrich in eighth, Henrik Rocha in ninth, and Jake Moore in 10th. So we have a quality start to the race, and we're already off. Not much gapping, of course. It's first lap, cold tyres, kind of inspecting the racetrack, even though you might have spent the last 30 minutes on here, but so far so good.
Yeah, I picked up about 5 cars at the back, all with damage. So there was an incident where quite a few cars came together, and they're kind of limping around to come back into the pits now and struggling with car control because clearly they're carrying quite a lot of damage. So sort of P26 downwards, you're seeing quite a few damaged cars there.
Yeah, let's just take a little look back at the track. Yeah, obviously you can already see very difficult to handle a car when you probably got your steering wheel at 90 degrees to the right to try and keep this. But I think unless the stewards have made a decision otherwise, this is not going to be a full course yellow, and there will be no race restart. We'll wait for the next 30 seconds to see whether that's concluded. But meanwhile, at the front, you can see it's getting busy. Scott Free under some pressure in second place from Ruben. And let's just take a little check on board with him. He seems to be tracking nicely in second place. You can see the spray kicking off here, and when you're 4 or 5 cars back, that does really, like it does in real life, it really magnifies, and it gets to be extremely difficult to actually pick your line. Most of it, I think, in this condition is just survival.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just trying to keep it safe. You're trying to keep steady. Like you said, you're trying to keep some visibility, because I think one of the biggest challenges in these conditions is picking your braking points and, you know, actually not really knowing what the guy in front's going to be doing on his braking points. So it's a bit of a learning curve for everybody, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Take a look inside to see just how bad it really is. That's brutal. Even with only 2 cars in front of you, just the visibility is really bad. Lights are on, windscreen wipers are on, and it's slippery out there as well. We're on board with Elgaard in 4th position here, who looks like he's reasonably comfortably on the pack, tracking the number 1 driver, Dave Crew, who's still maintaining up front. So currently it's Audi, BMW, Lamborghini, BMW, Ferrari for your top 5. So looking good so far, no problems. Just checking back a little further on the track. Let's head back down to Fabien in 11th place. He seems to be tracking well. Got a short gap between Simonite and Rocha. Let's take a look, see if that's closing in here. Okay, some action behind there.
Noticed while you're on board with Elgaard there, traction controls on 9. He's probably running a wet map as well. So drivers, imagine if that weather changes in the middle of a race, they've got to be thinking about, you know, not only their pit strategy, but also how they set the car up for the wet. So they've got to be making changes either on keyboards or steering wheels. There's a lot to think about here. It's all modelled in the sim.
Yeah, and that's one of the trickiest things about setting your car up for an endurance race. You will have to face some, well, it's highly likely you'll face some weather changes, but there's limitation to what you can actually do once you've committed to your race setup. It's probably worth just reviewing what are the variables that you've got to play with when you start a race in a dry setup and the weather closes in. What can you really do with the car?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? And I don't know, out of all the teams we've got here, how much wet weather practice that we had. But not only that, tonight is their first drive probably since a revision to physics and tyre models came in. So everybody's grappling with that. They're all in the same boat for sure, but there's a few unknowns here. And so this is a chance for them to just feel the cars out and see what those changes have done to the handling, and maybe making setup changes off the back of this over the next couple of days, although quite scary as you're approaching the race on Saturday.
Indeed. No need for a track tour. We'll do the track tour when we actually start this event up on Saturday. We'll start earlier than 10 minutes before the practice, but this track itself is very characterized by long straights, both of which are uphill, at which you can really get an advantage if you've wired your car up to have a different top speed, if you've done something with the aero, if you've done something with the brake ducts, but also characterized by technical sections which are mid to high speed. So they're not super low speed chicanes, except for one. They're reasonably speed, so quite technical corners which can often favor the mid-engine cars. It's an incredibly difficult track to select the right car, and it does depend on what your personal preference is and how you drive.
Yeah, this is when I'll be quite happy with the Lexus. It's recognised as being a great car in the wet.
I'm thinking Land Rover myself, but with this weather, I fancy something 4-wheel drive, probably a little soft suspended, so I can handle all of the curbs. But I don't need much horsepower; just need to get around safe.
Soft suspenders, did you say? Well,
that's later.
Well, that's what you said.
Yep. Okay, so far Dave Crew looks like he's not really extending his lead so much at the front there, still holding first position, but he still has Archie Clifford on his backside, who was Scott Free. So Scott Free's moved into third position, dropped a place, and Archie Clifford's moved up, which means that Elgaard continues. Elgaard has moved up as well. He's in third position, just having taken Wilhelm Weirich. So we've got still, I think Scott Free on my ticker here is dropping down here. So I'm now reading Dave Crew with Archie Clifford in second, Elgaard in third, Wilhelm in fourth here. So yeah, something's happened to Scott Free. Not sure what happened. Maybe just a little off. Doesn't seem to be dropping any further down the pack, but certainly at least 3 or 4 seconds he's lost in that last few minutes. As we keep an eye on the front 3 races, let's just take a look at off the back of Dave's car. This is the second place driver behind here, Clifford Roberts. Elgaard still off in some distance. Not many Lamborghinis actually registered. We noticed that earlier, taking a look through the cars registered for Saturday's event. Not a huge amount of Lamborghinis.
I think
this is one of them. This is the only one.
I think this is the only one, and that was James Hartnell driving on Saturday that we talked about. Really progressing through the pack.
That's right.
And who's currently P2 with his team on the hot stint quali board as well.
Just think, P2 on the hot stint at the moment. Okay, so just thinking, and this is the long legs of this Lamborghini. I've noticed this. It seems to find its own extra gear somewhere after around 200 kilometers an hour. There's such long legs in this. Everyone talks about how the BMW's got such pace, but I've always noticed how the Lamborghini, if you've got long straight circuits, it does tend to gain right at the top end of it. It seems to push all the way through. But that's interesting, isn't it? You're sitting there, we've got, I think it's 8 or so Beamers, we've got a lot of Bentleys racing as well. And again, it's down to personal preference, but I was surprised to see only one Lamborghini, and that in our experience so far, that Lamborghini's been right in the top 5.
Yeah, so a sound choice, really, let's face it, based on the evidence we're seeing here. So I was just looking at our Elgaard in P3 and Archie in P2, and he is closing him down. So we've got car 3 actually closing in on P2.
Yeah, okay, you're absolutely right.
Well. Actually, he's right on the back of him. I see now. You've just switched over cameras there.
These top 5 or 6 cars are now considerably faster than their previous laps. Dave is now 0.9 seconds up, 1 second up around on his previous lap. Archie 0.7 up, and Elgaard here 1.6 seconds up on their best lap. So currently the best lap just tracking down here I can see is, am I getting this right? Looks like a 2:35.957. Am I getting that right?
Yes. So we've actually we've got Elgaard with the purple lap at the moment on that 2:35.0. So pretty much 2:35 dead.
Yeah.
Did I just glance over and miss something there when someone had gone off the track as I looked back at the live feed?
I was missing that too, so that's not good. We've got 2 pairs of eyes here, and neither of us got it. We'll have to work on that one. Yep, we both missed it. There you go. So Clifford Roberts now in first. So what's happened is we've lost Dave Crew, so he's dropping back. Let's just check on Dave just to make sure he's still running. He certainly is still running. I can't see any penalties against his name or any other issues, so he might have just had an off while we were both reading a data sheet somewhere, which is the joy of it.
I think that's what it was, quite honestly.
Yeah, so interestingly, now I'm looking down the board, a lot of green laps coming in as either the line is getting easier to drive, the temperatures are actually getting into the tyres a bit more effectively, or the drivers are finding out how fast these cars can actually go around Spa in this type of weather. I don't think there's any condition changes here. It's saying it's around it's just going to continue to rain for the next 5-15 minutes, no changes, but it seems to me certainly in that top third section of our 30 races here tonight that they're picking up the pace at the front.
Yeah, and I keep focusing on Elgaard, but he's just gone purple again, down to a 2:34.1, so taking another 9/10 out of the last lap.
And Clifford Barnes just making a mistake there, and I think he's basically let him through. So leadership has just changed in that moment where we were talking. Elgaard sweeps through in the BMW, and Clifford Roberts in second place in the Lambo. So we did have a Lambo in the front of the pack for a short while there, and I can actually see he got great exit there. Look at the Lambo closing up there.
Yeah.
Really great car for getting out of corners, and pretty agile, but I've always found it's a little bit tentative on the curbs, which is probably not so bad at Spa. There's only a couple of really scary curbs. You can run most of these curbs, but good safe racing at the front, which is credit to them because it's brutal weather.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I'm not out there in it, much as I'd love to be part of the event. But when it's wet like this, you feel like you're driving on eggshells. Maybe until you start to find a bit of rhythm, and that's what's separating those drivers out that have got a lot more practice in these conditions. They're just much more comfortable. Of course, so I don't really want to harp on about it, but we've now got Elgard in P1, and he was my tip, even though he started in P6. And that's my favourite team. I like to call the Cleod, but actually is the McLeod team.
Well, let's hope somebody in chat tells us how to pronounce it. I think it's McLeod, but we'll find out. Interesting packing here. You've got Thomas Laws in 5th position. Behind him, Ruben Simonite, Scott Free still in 7th position, and Martin Schaefer in 8th. And that group of 4 drivers now looking like they're starting to get a bit of a groove on. If we take a look from Martin's car, you'll see how difficult it is to see any further than the end of your car. Excuse me while I have a drink of tea.
Just taking a look at the chat. We've got a few people in chat. There's some nice comments in there that make me chuckle, but I'm not going to share, because I think that if I was in one of those teams and that was my team name, I'd be a little bit disappointed right now. But yes, the weather does cause a bit of skidding. Let's be honest.
Indeed. Looking very good so far. We have Elgard, who has taken the lead in his BMW. He was quite patient, I think, at the start of it, and then Clifford made a mistake, and looks like he might have gapped him. We've got a 1.2 second gap at the top, but like I said before, these top 10, 11 drivers, green all the way down the chart here, they're all improving on their lap times as the conditions start to bring themselves towards the drivers. A number of cars in the pit, I can see. Christoph Taveren is in the pit, Alex Smith is in the pit, Voodoo Child is was just come out of the pit, Darius Andre is in a pit, Fabian is just going into the pit, and James Butler is in the pit. So we may have had a couple of retirements here. I can see certainly James Butler has retired, currently in 30th position on the chart here. No movement as far as I can see. There's an off right in front of us. Scott Free clearly having some struggles. That's a couple of errors we've seen from Scott Free, so probably having a little bit of difficulty refinding his rhythm as we see him dropping off the back of Martin Schaefer here. So it's just a traction issue. So he looked like he just lost traction, got a bit sideways, collected it, which was the smart piece. You go on the grass here and you're never to be seen again. He kept it on the grey stuff, lost a couple of seconds, and again really losing traction behind. You can see that's absolutely struggling behind here. So if we go on board with Ruben, you see Scott dropping back even further. So something's up. Maybe he took an accident, or maybe he's really just struggling to maintain the heat in the tires there. But he's dropping away. I've got him on my scoreboard here as 7, which is exactly how it's shown on the stream there. And as I speak, I've just picked up that Pinpoint has picked up a drive-through, and he's currently looking like he's executing it because he's in the pit. And there you go. It missed us. We're 16 minutes into the race, and of course the pit start.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're into driver swaps already. I was just taking a look at Scott Free's lap times. So it looks like there was an incident on lap 3. So he's doing sort of 237s, 238s. Lap 3 was a 250. So it's quite likely he picked up some damage in an incident maybe, and now that's why we see him really struggle to keep control of the car.
Yeah, I wonder, we don't really know who else is jumping on in Scott Free's car. Just checking in with his drivers on my driver sheet over here. He is, let's just do a quick look there. Where is Scott Free? He's driving with Medster and also with Nate Newcomer. So we know from previous races that Nate's very, very fast, as well as Medster. So we'll see whether Scott Free does a double stint and he's the only man in the team on the server, or whether he can hand the car over to somebody else who might be able to get the heatbacks in the tyre. But he was definitely in contention for the first handful of laps here, and then it started to go a bit south, as it were. As we track Elgard, Dan's tip for tonight's practice winner, going so well. And in second place, we have Wilhelm Weirich. Wilhelm, welcome. Really, really happy to have you as part of the race. Thanks for joining the practice, and can't wait to see you perform on the Saturday. Just to give a big shout out to William. He's part of the team, one of the teams that are joining us on the weekend, which is called Ring Taxi. So part of the team that's sponsored by Aris. So Aris, who's obviously one of the physics engineers at the Assetto Corsa team. So he has a team and Ring Taxi, and this Wilhelm is one of the drivers. So he is used to taking passengers and probably all kinds of other sports exotic cars around Nürburgring for people's life experiences. Not something I fancy, but I'm sure he's extremely experienced in handling the real thing. So great to have him here doing the simming with us.
Yeah, fantastic. While you're talking now, I was just watching Elgard come in, and what was our stint time again? Because he's come in at
19.
17 minutes and 50. 19. Okay, because I thought you said something about 17 minutes. I'm looking at 17 minutes 50, and I'm thinking, wow, they're cutting it a bit fine. Okay, so we should expect everybody to come in now.
Yeah, it's going to get a little bit messy in terms of the order here, especially with such a short sprint race. You can't really track this very easily. But what we did have was Elgard has entered the pits as our previous leader. He didn't have a big gap on the rest of the field, not like a 20, a 40, 50 second gap or anything like that. So he will lose the lead at some point as we go through this transition. But of course, it's how the next drivers jump in. So I'm just tracking through, and I can see that car number 10, taken from Scott Free, is Nate Newcomer. And as we check that, Voodoo Child, currently sitting in fourth, has a drive-through, and I picked him up. So Voodoo Child now coming in via the wall to serve a drive-through. So good practice to get that pit entrance right, and he looked like he was. Let's be honest, he was messing around with the MFD, wasn't he? He was selecting how much fuel to put in and which driver should next pick up. And I think he scratched the wall a little bit. That'll buff out.
Well, when you've got like 18 minutes in the car, it doesn't give you a lot of time to take that strategy to set the car up and request your next driver, check your tyre pressures, particularly, going out in the wet. You're going to be having to, probably mess around with those tyre pressures quite a bit. You're checking your fuel, you're chatting to your teammates, and before you know it, your stint is over and you haven't had time to get everything in place.
Yeah, indeed. I can see a little bit of interesting racing going on in front there, just checking in with Husaria and Wouter Vleilen. This is going to be interesting, isn't it? Different lines to take into La Source. We're riding along with two different Aston Martins. So they're both nice liveries, which is something that we'll talk about when we get to the charity race. The work that people have put in on their liveries is just outstanding. But I always think that La Source can be taken at least three different ways. T1. Oh, and there we go. We were on board for a brutal tank slapper, which was collected via the wall. And that's going to cause Wouter a little bit of stress, because it's a long lap to hobble this car around, and he may have only just picked the car up after that stint. So somewhere in the world, someone is sitting there and thinking, oh, thanks. I just spent the last 19 minutes getting it that far and you span off. But these things happen. It's extremely difficult to get used to the car in an instant. And when you're full of adrenaline, any kind of mistake can be made. But so far he looks like he's all right. He's back on pace.
Well, and let's be honest, probably the hardest, most challenging part of the track in the dry, going through Eau Rouge, up the hill and into Radion. Now imagine that on your first lap in the wet. A totally different story.
Yeah, I love the comment in chat. Somebody's asked a question: what is quicker, a drive-through or an actual lap? Somebody needs to get the calculator out. That's a great question. So current lap times here are around the 2 minutes, and best lap time is 2 minutes 32, which is currently held by Ignacy Bucek, who's currently leading. I'm interested. I wonder if it is costing a full lap.
I can tell you that the pit stops before, with a 30-second driver changeover, were coming in around the 157 to 205. So you take 30 seconds off that, you're looking at something like a 1.5 minutes for a drive-through. Versus in these conditions, 2 minutes 35. In the dry, about 2:18. So the drive-through is quicker, but you lose so much time at Spa because you're going through 2-hole pit sections on the pit limiter, so it's really expensive, way more expensive than any of the other tracks.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it is such a long drive, just constantly on bouncing off the rev limiter, and I've seen a familiar name and a familiar car. Here's that one-off Lamborghini with James Hartnell at the wheel, putting the pressure on Ignacy Butchek, who's currently leading our race. So just a quick run through. We've got Ignacy Butchek, James Hartnell, Oskar Sandberg, RWB John D, Husaria, Wouter, Henry, Zach, Voodoo Child and Nate in our top 10 positions, and quite a spread of manufacturers as well. Only the Astons and the Ferraris have doubled up. No, there's 3 Beamers in that top 10 as well. So Beamer looking strong on the circuit, or maybe just picking the right drivers.
Yeah, some of that could be conditions, but again, as we know, the Beamer is monster down the straights. 650 newton meters of torque, 550 brake horsepower. It's a very stable car, but it's got the longest wheelbase and it's the longest car out of the whole pack. So whilst it's amazing down the straights and it's got a lot of grunt, it's really hard to get through those tight, tricky corners. So I think you need to be quite a skillful driver in order, to take the sweeping turns, to take the tricky corners, and then you reap the benefits on the straights.
Yeah, and it's again back to this whole thing here. My feeling is that the technical corners here aren't stressing this BMW as much as maybe some other more technical circuits, because this seems like a very strong car. Obviously, it's very fast, but it's a setup thing. Obviously, we talked about it earlier. We've started in the rain. The drivers knew it was going to be a wet race, so they'll have pulled out of the bag some amazing wet setups, which frankly would have spun me backwards within a moment. And you can see that it's actually having a great effect. The guys are now picking up the pace. Again, I can see quite a lot of greens going through the board after that first phase of changeovers, and we are 25 minutes into the race, so nearing the halfway mark. And you can see on the stream there we've got a message which is around a live steward verdict. That's something that will be featuring in the Saturday footage as well. So now when we actually have a steward verdict, that gets put onto the stream so that everybody can see what the judgment was. That also helps us to make sure we understand what's going on. We talked about it, didn't we, right at the top? There was a multi-car crash on lap 1, and Rigel has been giving a penalty for that. So that's difficult, but if you're going to do it now in a practice rather than the real race.
So there's a discussion in chat going on about phonetics and pronunciation. We've got no chance. We've got absolutely no chance. I mean,
Really?
we'll try our best. I am phonetically trained. But that's just because I know my alphas and my bravos and my charlies. I do
roger
not
that.
know. Yeah,
Roger that.
10-4, buddy.
Yeah. Right.
But as people are saying, there's quite a few drive-throughs, and we're seeing those getting cleared. I think that's a reasonable thing to do here. Is that people are very likely picking up drive-throughs for cut track, off track warnings, because in the wet, clearly trying to get to grips with this, you're going to be sliding wide, particularly in a lot of these fast corners.
Yeah.
And it's a practice race, so it's a chance for people to actually realise how much they've got to rein it in to stay within the track boundaries. And as we talked about on Saturday, that's going to be really important in the 12-hour race. You pick up that drive-through, and it's going to add that minute and a half that we talked about. Now, you could probably ride maybe 1 or 2 of those, but if you pick up any more of those, it's going to seriously impact your race.
Yeah, we talked about it. How hard is it to do 12 hours racing in any format and not make more than 3 mistakes? Just watching this, I mean, the difference in speed here was just amazing. But what I'm seeing on the screen here, which is really interesting, is we're actually tracking Grey Bob in the yellow McLaren. And what I'm seeing on the score here that is this lap is going to be 9 seconds quicker than the previous best, and that makes me realise the value of having this as AM and Pro-Am and Pro Racing. So what's happened here is Grey Bob's first teammate has come in and set 241s, I think they were, or better or worse than that, and Grey Bob's come in and actually cut that time right down. That's what I'm seeing. So you've got some teams which have quite a high variation in their skill levels. So you have a Pro-Am team. You have some teams which are off the fastest pace, but they're all team members are consistently off the pace by a couple of seconds, and that would be an Am team. And then you've got the drivers who are just really able to hit the super fast times on a regular basis, and they're being put into a pro league. You can see that on the screen on the ticker on the left hand side on the overall scoreboard, marked as different colors. Those that are in white are effectively the pro teams. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. The silver ones are Pro-Am and the red ones are Am. Is that correct?
I think so. I've lost my list. But I will have it ready for Saturday. Yeah, so I was doing a bit of research on that today, and when we came to start tonight's practice race, of course I've lost my link.
Nice.
But I think you're right. I think you are right. What I like about that, though, is it's nice to have a balanced team. You know, you've got the guys that can go out and really smash the laps in, but this reflects real life. There are Pro-Am teams within the series, and GT3 is a gentleman driver series. That's why the cars have traction control. They have ABS, because they're designed to be driven by normal guys with a lot of money. That's not saying they haven't got pace, but that's what I love about ACC. This is the immersion, the realism is fantastic, because you can reflect the real series.
Love the name of this team, Crashing Tiger, Skidding Dragon. Currently in 7th place, we're holding 6th, just got overtaken on the top of Kemmel Straight there. John D at the steering wheel, they've had a good start to the race, so currently in 7th place, and John D is setting faster laps, so he's pegging his own laps here, which is good to see. With Westenberg in 8th position, 2.3 seconds or 2.4 seconds faster than their previous lap. So as we've noticed, the driver swap overs is having a distinct impact on the way the teams lay out. At the front, I can see that James Hartnell is a half a second behind Ignacy Puszek, and that's not changing. But Wouter Verlelen and Zach Morgan in behind, with Nate Newcomer in 5th, Ricardo Borges in 6th, RWB John D in 7th, Westenberg in 8th, Josh Barton in 9th, and Grey Bob in 10th. But it's the variety that's happening here. We're going to see some changeovers in position as faster drivers are taking the wheel, or possibly slower drivers are taking the wheel at this phase of the race.
I'll tell you what's amazing is our P1 and our P2 are 38 seconds clear of P3. So at the moment, in these conditions, how we're sat at the moment, they're in a class of their own.
Absolutely right, and it's going to be something that's going to develop. We are running with tonight 30 drivers, of whom I'm suspecting 2 or 3 of them have already had to quit out, either technical or other issues, as we just watched Westenberg lose control, and he's hit the wall there. So it's very easy to happen. Remember that this driver's probably only been in the car for 5 minutes, having watched his colleague running around the track, so easy to make those mistakes, but it always gives everybody else on the track that opportunity to feel like they might actually be able to make some places. So just track back here to see how the driver's doing, because I could see that there was quite a lot of action happening behind here. So this is the race for 9th, 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Actually, that's really quite a pack, isn't it?
Oh, please stay here, Si. This is fantastic. Look at this scrap that's going on here.
He's run wide at the front there. Grey Bob's given the opportunity for at least 2 cars to slide through, see if the AMG can make his mark. And we're going through. Everyone's taking advantage. So Grey Bob, one mistake there cost 3 cars, and he'll be unhappy about that, no question.
And
4 cars.
It's developed into 4. Oh,
that was a mugging, wasn't it? 2 corners.
That's got to hurt, right?
Yeah. It's a thing, isn't it? It does happen. What happens is one driver takes advantage, and everybody else who's behind them thinks, well, I'm going to go for it then. There's this kind of psychology that happens where if you see a driver in front of you make a mistake and somebody takes advantage, you think, well, the door's wide open for me, I'm going for it. And it seems to slot everyone through half a gap. It's interesting, but he's definitely getting dropped here. Grey Bob struggling at this phase of the race.
Yeah. And there's that mental side to it. You make a mistake like that, you see 2 cars go past you, you go 3 cars, and then suddenly you've lost your rhythm, And that's why he's starting to drop back, because now he's thinking, I was just taking too much pace, I need to back off a bit. But then you're weighing that against, but why are those 3 guys in front of me getting away from me when we were pegging each other?
Absolutely. So, and great to see Aris here as well. Welcome. Thanks for spending the time on the practice. Looking forward to seeing you and the team racing over the weekend. So Aris is driving in the Ferrari, which is one of those cars that's just such a joy to listen to, and that's a fantastic looking livery as well. So Aris currently in 9th place. This is a gold team entry. So they're just getting their eye in, and Aris is already up on this lap within the first sector, so he looks like he's starting to get a feel for the conditions out there. And you can see, and this will be the case for Saturday as well, with 50 cars on track. I got a little bit unstuck there. You'll just see people constantly entering and exiting the pits because of whatever circumstances, issues they've had, or legitimate handovers and driver swaps, and that has a tendency to really influence the way that you drive, because the driver in front of you might not always be for position. The driver in front of you might be a back marker, but sometimes you also get a fast back marker behind you who is faster than you and wants to make progress, and they want to unlap themselves, and you've got to work out, even though they're getting blue flagged, you need to work out how to make that work on track. It's always a negotiation between the 2 drivers.
Yeah, and I think it's about being gentleman drivers when you're on track, in an endurance race, in any race, that you've got to think, this is a 12-hour race. There's no point me having this fight. Just let someone go, build up your pace again, and see how you can work it out. But you're right, someone who's trying to unlap themselves, entirely valid. If they've got pace, they can do that. So again, sometimes it's no point trying to fight someone who's a back marker behind you who's got more pace. You let them past. Maybe you'll pick up a few tips by following them. Take a look at their line, see how they're driving, and you're not going to lose time that way.
Yeah, while you were giving us that tip, I was just looking at Aris's car, which is behind here. Bonnet's hanging off here, so they've clearly had some impact at some point. You can see on the Ferrari behind there's some, so he's got some damage that he's carrying on the car, which may be affecting his race. Well, clearly not, because he slides through. That's a very, very neat maneuver. He makes that stick through Blanchimont and up to the heavy braking zone into the final chicane. That was pretty spectacular. The real door-to-door, made 2 places in the Paul Fouet. Again, I need to check because there's a blue flag going out. Oh, that's very late pit entry there.
Wow.
Wow, they managed to actually avoid each other. But yeah, that's pretty impressive as they go for their second driver swap on the 35th minute of this race. So remember, 19-minute stint times. These guys are barely warmed up and they're asked to come back in the pit to flip over. But this is practice, and it's really what we're practicing. Everyone knows how to switch in and out, get back on the track, and that the race winner is not really relevant, although Ignatian Bucek will probably tell you that's a lie.
So I was just picking up some comments in the chat. Thank you. RWB Cos points out, teams change drivers, comms change nappies. Yeah, got my stack ready here. I've got my drip set up with a bit of gin just to keep me going. But an hour I can cope with that. Maybe 12 hours it might get a bit messy towards the end of the race.
Yeah, it's going to be a long and smelly room that I live in, and that's fine because the other half is quite happy to keep me out of her life for a Saturday. All good. Interesting as well when I see the cars going around here that, as I was noting earlier in the week when we saw some earlier practices, that the Mercedes don't seem to be making a mark here. Maybe it's a setup thing, or maybe it's a car thing, but there's a few cars missing from the top 15 or so here. But obviously it doesn't matter too much because we're not racing under any constructor agreements or anything like that. It's just I actually fancied that the AMG might be quite quick up here. It's quite a beast of an engine, can really push along the straight, but it's obviously not that competitive at the moment.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, maybe it's a bit of a handful. It's a struggle to get the power down in wet conditions, and that's where it starts to suffer. Because normally we would see a couple of those AMGs, somewhere in the top 6, top 10. But our highest is in P11 at the moment. Obviously, we've got the pit stops to work themselves out, so we get a clear picture. Oh, got somebody off at
somebody off there making a recovery. Yeah, making a recovery, and that was our previous leader and current leader, Ignacy Buchek, just leaving the pits here with Nate Newcomer behind. And I think actually Nate is. Let's just check here. Yeah, it's got Nate Asing coming in the pits. That's the current second position, but of course that'll switch over as Chris Crossman takes the second place position. So as we can see it here, with our new driver in the BMW, which is Christoph Verstappen, currently taking it away. So as you might expect, we've got 2 golds in the front there. So 2 pro teams, a Pro-Am and a Pro in 1, 2, 3 and 4. Looking comfortable as it stands at the moment. Quite a different spread, but the BMWs continue to looking very strong in this segment of the race here. We are 22 minutes left to the end of the race. So far, only one major stewarding verdict that's been required. Good to test that. That's part of the system that we put in place. So we'll be running a 12-hour race on Saturday, and we will have stewards who are constantly cycling into the stewards room, and they will be reviewing any live steward requests that come from the field. So when the guys are racing together, they'll be in communications with their teammates, as well as the number one driver, or the current driver of the car being in the driver channel, but they'll be able to talk with each other the whole time. And what typically we've seen as they've been sharing tips is that a lot of them actually have effectively spotters. So one of their driver buddies will be maybe in the car behind, just tracking to see whether they're reducing the delta, or whether they look like they might be making a move left or right. But also they'll be filing any issues that they think. If they think there's been an issue that's affected their race performance, they can file that into the stewards to raise a query about other driver performance. And the stewards will then use the replay function, go and check it, have a debate. There'll be a final count back from effectively the head steward, and that decision will get made. Myself and Dan will relay that information to you live as it happens. And it is frustrating. I mean, you told the story last time, Dan. We've been in an endurance race, and we were one of those teams that had a problem. We put in a complaint, and we sat there almost pulling our hair out. It's been a week worth of practice, and we didn't know what was going on. So it's a really, really great system that RWB have put in place here to make sure everyone's informed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that's a thankless task, because you're right that when you're in the car, you want a verdict, you want justice, you feel like you're in the right, but they've got many more camera angles. But the first thing they've got to do is go back and find that replay point, and that's no mean feat in itself. Then they've got to take a look at it between the group of them and all come to an agreement. And of course they don't want to wreck somebody's race, but at the same time we've got to promote fair racing, so it's a difficult job. Anyway, while you were talking about that, I was picking up our new purple lap holder, and I'm really going to mess this name up, I'm sorry already, but it's a Nore Rose in the Aston of 1337 Racing, currently in P14. P13. So they were in P14. I think we just missed the overtake. So I was tracking that. They were switched around when I first picked that up. So looking pretty quick, and a nice livery on that Aston as well.
Yeah, fabulous cool looking thing, isn't it? In the Flying Lizard Motorsport team.
Look at that, fantastic!
Wow, what a great job! Absolutely love these. We'll be definitely running an informal competition for voting on the best livery during the race, because some of the guys have worked really well and pulled off some amazing. I mean, I'd say some of these designs are better than the pro designs that you actually see in real life.
Absolutely. There's a lot of talent out there when it comes to livery design.
Yeah, that's worth putting hours into. You're going to drive this thing around a track for 12 hours and it's going to be live streamed. You might as well look as cool as you can, as Rose looks like he's putting a move here on Gajara in front. Interesting situation here, as you're right, it looks like he could be the man on the move, getting hold of that Aston and wringing its neck and showing us what it can be done. So far we have Christoph Verstappen in the lead, with Medster in second place and Aris in third position, with Dacusa in fourth and Sean Wright in fifth. That's your top five. I note that Archie Clifford Roberts who was in the car for the first stint, is back in the car in 6th place. So he'll probably want to pick back some positions, as they were in the top 3, if I remember, for the first few laps. A couple of retirements, and I can see some people coming out of the pit lane right now, but I think we've settled into the final 17 minutes, and that's a lot of pressure being put there. But I think we're settling into the final 17 minutes of this race. There's no more pit changes that are planned to happen. Any pit changes that happen now are because of incidents. As you can see, a late braking Ferrari in front, losing 1, 2, 3 places and moving back as Rose looks to have picked that up. You see the Ferrari in the mirror there, continuing to put pressure on Jardier in the Audi in front there. This is what Eau Rouge and Radion looked like at full pace. What an outstanding overtake, and note there how wide he went on the exit there, just to make sure that there wasn't any contact at the end of Radion and into Kemmel Corner and up the Kemmel Straight very safely. So it's just just little things like that, just awareness of each other, that make for such great racing, and it makes our job much easier.
I actually think all of our teams have got at least one more pit stop.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, so none of them have got the green marker next to their team numbers on the board there.
No.
In fact, some of them, I believe, that this is probably down to technical driver swaps, showing that they've got 2 more pits left to do. So that may be because they had to serve drive-throughs and they haven't actually done a driver swap, or it may be technical issues. But yes, I think the majority have still just got the one pit left to do.
Yep, gotcha. Great to see the different skills in the drivers as well. So far it looks like it's Pro-Am. That was a back marker. Pro-Am, Pro-Am in 3rd place. So our highest performing amateur team is Dacusa in car number 88. Just do a quick check on Dacusa. Dacusa driving for Racing Sim Tools Hivemind, which is the second of the 2 Racing Sim Tools teams coming in for the weekend. So great to see those guys. They are Voodoo Child, Dacusa, Gixxer and Shooter 80, and they're driving the Beamer. Yeah,
and we can see we've got 3 of the Beamers in the top 10 now. It's doing very well in these conditions.
Yep, just tracking back through here. We are now counting into, I think, 28. I think I just check here. Eddie Warden, is that a... just checking that my... just checking my thing was still working. I had a little bit of a technical issue. Yeah, sometimes when you double click on the driver, it doesn't do anything, so that's worth a test, isn't it? I think that might be because they're not actually in the server anymore, but they're showing as being in 21st position, which is a bit awkward. Note to self. Christoph Verstappen on a fast lap, 0.3 seconds faster than the current fast lap. So just tracking through here, driver best laps obviously highly variant at the minute. Some of the fast laps are in the 2:32s, and we're running all the way. So you can see a couple of 2:36s and even a 2:38, but they might have retired. So quite a variety of different speeds being taken, or car performances through the race. But so far this is looking to me like this is going the way of Christoph Verstappen and their team, which has been a fantastic performance.
Yeah, and something must have happened through that last series of pit stops, because we had P1 and P2 basically battling each other with, then at the time, around a 40-second gap to P3. Now we've got a gigantic gap from P1 to P2. So P2 somehow lost out in that last round, and again that may have been a technical issue with the pit stop. Oh dear. Yeah,
we just picked that up. That's me checking out Medster as he exits out of the pits and makes a record. My, that's battered. So that's sad. This is the second position driver, and I think that might have been a reaction to that from the Porsche, probably avoiding action and probably overcorrected and lost it. But we're watching Medster currently in 2nd place with 13 minutes of the race to go with an absolutely battered car. That's straight out of Wreckfest. He can barely get it around the corner.
Yeah, you can see that's going to be a challenge for them to hold on to that P2 now.
Yeah,
They're going to have to
absolutely.
pit. The way that car's driving, you can't see he's going to be able to carry on like this.
If we jump into the dash of Clifford Roberts, who's now in third place, who's going to catch up Medster any second now and just slide straight through, with Sean Wright, I think, in his rear view mirror. Just check backwards. No one's behind him. That's all good. So yeah, this is Clifford almost certainly going to consume Medster in the next two corners here. So this is basically our second place man hobbling it back to the pits as quickly as possible. Who knows how long it's going to take to change, but this is an opportunity to make a change, right? So if you are a minute in the pits here, you're currently driving in second place, you could change driver, which could be an opportunity for you, but it's just an opportunity really just to see if they can actually make something out of this final section. There's still 12 minutes in this race to go, and the gaps between the times are quite high. But wouldn't you know it, in second place, that one and only Lambo again.
Yeah, I think it's a contender for the race if they can keep it consistent. They've got good pace. Their drivers seem to be quite consistent on pace, so they'll be one to watch.
What's that? So just looking ahead there, Christoph Verstappen driving for McLeod Racing Team in the BMW with Elgaard, Valerie Solheim, Ignatiy Buchek as the three drivers alongside. This is going to be a strong team, I suggest, for the Saturday race, having performed really well in last week's practice as well. But of course, some other drivers might be keeping their powder dry, right? Why would you show all your cards before the 12-hour endurance? Just, cruise through practice for a couple of sessions. No need to set any blistering times. No need to show what you're capable of. Just take it easy. And we've no idea. In 12 hours, so many different stories will be told of so many different teams. It's our job to try and bring them to you so you can see what it's like to be in 35th place and having had your own adventure. It's not all about the top three drivers, and we'll make sure that we make a point of moving through the field and getting a good spotlight on everyone who's driving, because most of the drivers here will have put a lot of hours in to prepare for this. It's for a good cause. We're doing this for charity on Saturday, and people want to show. They want to show what they're capable of, and everyone who's in sim racing is a competitor in some way or other. There's beating in their hearts. So looking forward to seeing how the different stories happen when we get to Saturday.
Yeah, I think they're a lot smarter than me if they're keeping their powder dry. In the practice race, the red mist comes out, the competitive spirit comes out. It's like I am going for it. So yeah. I've just got no chance of hiding any pace or capacity. But there's a lot of teams out here a lot smarter than me. So you're probably right. And you picked up on telling stories. That will be the beauty of Saturday. The fact that it's a longer race and it's an endurance race, it gives us the time to breathe and do some of that, take you down the field, show you some of the stories. And because we won't have a random grid, we'll be able to give you, the information about somebody starting in a certain position and how much progress they've made in the race or vice versa. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, these compact practice races are just about us getting the technicals out of the way and actually just figuring out, is our approach working? But the 12 hours, I think it will have a different flavour to it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just to make another shout out here, this is we're following Oskar Sandberg, who is the second of our what you'd probably call real racing drivers, joining us for Saturday's event. So Oscar's part of the Ring Taxi organisation, who have been donating very heavily to charity to support the RWB course. So big shout out to those guys. Thanks very much for turning up for practice. We look forward to seeing your performance on the big day, and it's great to have people who've got real life racing experience coming to sim racing. It's not the same. They'll never ever tell you it is the same, but it's competitive, it's enjoyable, and I can imagine it's a damn sight more affordable than driving an actual Ferrari around Nürburgring.
Definitely on the bucket list, to take one of those ring taxi rides. There's part of me that would like to drive a car around there. There's a part of me that would be nervous about that. but I'm actually not a bad passenger, unlike you, Si. I'd love to be taken around there at pace by somebody that knows that circuit.
No, I think you'd have to give me the sick bucket. But there you go. So just tracking our top 5 here, we've got Elgaard in the lead, Archie Cliff Roberts in second, Oskar Sandberg in third, John Gixer in fourth, and we've got Tiger in fifth. So let's take a look at Tiger. This is the Crashing Tiger and Skidding Dragon team. This is great work. I mean, this is a Pro-Am team with Tiger at the wheel at the moment in for the final stint of the race. Checking in, looking like he's going to get into the top 5 if he can keep his head for the next final section of the race. Great performance, because I don't think they were very high on the random qualification sheet. So I think they've made a good progress through the race as we get to this final 7 minutes of the race.
Yeah, and the top Audi in the field as well.
Yeah, shout. That's a tricky car. I've always thought really stiff, difficult over curbs in my experience. But handling it really well. It's one of those cars that seems to leap out of corners, but I don't know what it's like in the wet. It must be really quite a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's one for the setup kings, because I find that out of the box on default setups. Maybe it's me, but I find it a difficult car to drive. But clearly rewarding if set up well. It's got someone with the right skill at the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like they have, because Tiger's kept them in 5th place. Although, is that Nate behind? I've just got to check. No, I don't think it is. We've got Josh Barton. No, we haven't, because Josh has not. He's left the server. It's Nate Newcomer is the next one down the track here. So Tiger looks comfortably ahead of Nate. Nate is just on the Paul Frere straight, so considerably behind. This looks like a settled top 5 as we stand at the moment, with Oskar showing a real lick of pace here in what looks like, is that a fixed or a damaged? Let's have a little look on the bonnet there, see whether that's a fixed. Now that still looks like it's wobbling around like crazy. I think still struggling with a damaged car, but Oskar is 0.6 seconds faster than the fastest lap within the team, and they've hit a 2:33.846 as their fastest lap so far this session.
Yeah, which is not far off the purple of 2:32.1. It's a shame, because I think a few teams have had some technical issues. So we've got James Hartnell there in P3. That team has completed all of their pit stops. P1 and P2 have still got another stop to go.
Okay.
But I think that's not because they haven't pitted. It's because there's been some sort of issue. That's the way I'm reading it, based on particularly, Elgaard's team, their performance throughout the race in the McLeod team.
Yeah. We're going to keep that one, aren't we?
Let that
go. Please. Someone from the team, tell us who's right or wrong, or just keep taking them.
I know I'm wrong, but I still can't let it go.
Fine, all right. So
it's actually BD Racing, I think, on the surface of it right now, is our contender for the winner of this race. Depending on how they go. It's interesting. I was looking through the comments, and I think probably one of the drivers or someone with experience of Spa in the rain was saying that there's an absolute river coming out of the pit exit, and it's catching people by surprise. So just as you're coming out there, aquaplaning and actually losing control of the car on pit exit.
Okay.
Probably some of what we've seen around Eau Rouge and Raidillon may have been a result of that.
Yeah, we certainly saw a car that was parked up in what looked like the side of the pit lane there. Big shout out with 4 minutes to go to John Gixer and the team. This is our current highest placed AM team in 4th position, looking fairly comfortable in their BMW. Oh, please don't give them commentator's curse. Kept that together. So kudos as he slides and slithers his way with, 650 Newton meters of torque up the straight into the final corner here into Lake Coombe. Last 3 laps are relatively consistent, 239, 237, 238. So I think that's a real sign of you don't necessarily need to have outright pace in order to do well in an endurance race. If you can manage your race as a whole team and not have too many issues, you can actually finish quite high up. Yeah, exactly. And one thing we'd noticed already as well in previous practice sessions, you've got to practice the pit stop. It's probably one of the most boring things to sit there and practice, but you've got to practice it because there's seconds to be gained in the pit stop if you get it right. There's minutes to be lost if you're messing around or you get a drive through because you sped in the pit lane. So I think it's easy to overlook it. It's just not as fun, is it? I'm going to go on the server for an hour and practice my pit stops. No, you'll never hear anyone say that. But the value you'll get from really knowing when to hit the brakes and get the maximum speed that you can get on entrance and exit of the pit lane, and hit your box on the best position. Because I've noticed if you hit the box
switch
too
to
far
P1,
away,
switch to P9.
P9.
We've just had a bit of a coming together with a whole bunch of cars on T1.
Good shout.
You just got a recovery off the back of that.
Oh, okay, so a little too slow for me. Apologies for that. As we see the Astons pushing through here, so that's 8th and 9th place. Menacing Skull followed by CSAM, looking pretty like a tasty final 2 minutes. This is pretty much one lap to go, with Elgard in first position on his 20th lap. Sandberg doing a great job, constantly putting in fast laps in second place. James Hartnell in third in the Lambo. In fourth, we have our first AM in Gixxer. Tiger and the team are in fifth place, which is great work. And we've got Zach Morgan in sixth, Richie Barry in seventh, Menacing Skull in eighth, and we're looking at CSAM here with Henry Wardell in 10th position. Again, just to reiterate, good spread of cars. Good to see the Ferraris. No Porsches. The Porsches are back down in 17th. There's a spinner there. In 17th and 19th. So maybe this isn't a track that lends itself very well, but I think we need to go on board with CSAM here because he looks like he fancies his chances for this final section. If he can make Stavolo as good as possible, which is not this corner but the next, if he can get close to Menacing Skull, sorry, that's wrong. I'm on wrong corner there. We're actually going through Lefania. Next one is Campus, which is a tight right-hander with some back markers by the look of it in the way. If he can get the pedal down through Stavolo, this is the moment to do it. And if those back markers cause issues, there is a passing opportunity. There's 34 seconds left. I don't think Ignatia has actually passed the lap. I can't see any checkered flags here at the moment, so this is definitely racing for position between the two Aston Martins, and you can see they're constantly wrestling with the car, and he's gone wide there. You can see Menacing Skull went wide, and that gave everything for CSAM, who has slid through into position. Looks like he'll defend that very comfortably, and he's made the place, so good to be on board for that session there. It's definitely a back marker in front, which was good, didn't get in the way, no problems there, as CSAM makes it through into 8th place. I cannot see that.
Whoa,
I
can see that braking,
yeah.
real challenge with your braking distance.
Yeah.
Understanding when the car in front is going to jump on the brakes. You don't want to lose too much time, but you absolutely do not want to rear end them. I'll tell you what, Si, while you were talking through that, the onboards really showing how much these cars are moving around in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can't relax for a second. And
congratulations to Ignatia, who takes the checkered flag for this race. A great race, and something's happened because Gixxer is coming through in second here with James Hartnell in third, and you can see James putting the pressure on. So this is our top amateur team going in to perform either a pit stop or otherwise, but the race is at a checkered flag, and now either the system's going crazy or I'm going crazy. That I thought was a change of position. I could be wrong, who knows. ACC has a tendency to just flip at the end here, but I think we're still running through the cars for the final corners here. So Aris is currently driving in 4th position, not yet taken the checkered flag by law, if I'm right, and behind him, that's very wide, but he's just managing to keep that together.
Yeah, that was James Hartnell for P2, and Gixxer went over the line in the pit lane to take P3.
Okay, so I can see on the scoreboard here some post-race penalties firing up, just to check those.
All because of those technical pit stop issues. So we've got a whole raft of teams finishing needing at least 1 or 2 pit stops. So I think that's hopefully some lessons learned in practice. Hopefully not game issues that caused that, but maybe team miscommunication. Maybe didn't do the driver swap in the right way, didn't get the request in. Who knows?
I think you're right.
But equally, it could be that there are some teams that didn't get all drivers in for the session either. So any number of reasons you might get those penalties in a practice session, but we won't be seeing that in the full race.
Yeah, I'm tracking each car as it's coming through. We're watching Richie Barry here in 7th position, car number 333, as he takes 7th position. And let's check back. It's still telling me that that's CSAM who's going to pick up 8th position, with Menacing Skull picking up 9th. Henry Wardell picking up 10th. Nate Newcomer is still coming up, Paul Frere, and he will take 11th position. So Nate and the team were high up in the rankings at the start of the race, and then had some issues, and their bonnet is pretty folded up. Looks like some kind of rally car. Verlumps is that was a retirement. Max Mahler, that doesn't look like he's driving for position right now. As Yannick Rambach is also in pit. So I think pretty much we're folding up here. We've got 14th position driver. I think that's pretty much the end of the race. I've taken the checkered flag. So a great finish. Just a reminder then to everyone, that was our final practice. That was the short practice. The next time you'll be on track together, you'll be basically racing each other for 12 hours. So you've got another 3 or 4 days to get your final lap times in, your practice, get that comfortable hour in the seat in, make sure you got your wrist strap, your aircon unit, and everything else that you need, nappies, 4 litres of water, all that stuff, so that you are prepared for the 12 hours of Spa. We're doing it for charity, so please make sure you contact your friends, your family, anyone who might be remotely interested in this event, to jump on the stream and give as generously as they can, because the Charity Mind is doing great work. So we're here to crush that £1,000 target, and let's do our best on Saturday. The racing is there as well, but let's really go for that as a target. So with that, I'll say thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Si.
And we'll wrap up for the night. So thanks everyone, and sleep well. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers.